Joker's background remains a mystery, which is exactly what the canon wants it to be. You know what I mean? Because Joker is bigger than his backstory. Batman is a story about vengeance. His backstory is him. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 16. I messed this one up worse than I messed up my 476ers podcast, honestly. But welcome to episode 16, I believe it is, of the Broadview podcast. We're going to talk about the Joker today, which I just watched. And I was supposed to have Fred on with me, but lo and behold, Fred doesn't answer his phone. That is a thing that he is known to do. He is a notorious non-phone answerer. If you have an emergency, please do not call Fred at any cost. He is the last person you should contact on the planet, because then he won't answer his phone anyway. So go figure. Shout out to Fred anyway, but we're going to talk about the Joker today. I watched it literally earlier today for this podcast, which, you know, it's a little bit late, but I'm going to pair this by watching the Batman trailer, I think, which we can kind of talk about and break down, even though I'm not as good of a comic book nerd per se as some of the guys. Like, you can go watch New Rock Stars on YouTube. They do a really, really good job of all this stuff. I mean, they're like pouring over data constantly. They're excellent. Those dudes are just fucking are crazy. They're always they're just on point. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about the Joker. So what I want to do here actually is I want to spend some time talking about. I want to get into some of the comic book stuff about the Joker before we talk about like the mental health and violence aspect of it. And maybe this will be broken down into two parts for video purposes. I don't know. We'll see. But so the Joker to me is probably the best comic book villain I think ever. Even if you include anime. Now, I don't know all the anime. There's like a million animes out there. And I don't know all of them, but, you know, Joker, to me, every villain I've ever come across, Joker is the one. He is the most destructive force probably in DC Comics with the least amount of power to his name. You know, for example, he's not as strong as like Darkseid, who you'll see in the Snyder cut of the Snyder cut of Justice League, which is coming out in 2021. Which is just Justice League, but uncut. The uncircumcised version of Justice League. So he's not as destructive, but if you follow the comic books, if you followed like things like Injustice, which is the video game, which then spawned the comic book series, or if you ever read like the Alex Ross comic book, which was called Kingdom Come, which is one of my favorite comic book artists, then you see that Joker essentially just with his by his chaotic nature is able to, in both of these comics, is essentially able to either make Superman disappear, just wrecking him mentally and making him leave, or is able to make him lose his fucking mind. And that's what happens in Justice, and that's because of the Joker. The Joker's history and his backstory purposely, which I don't know, you know, no way that the creators of the Joker originally in like the 60s, I don't know when the Joker originates. His original, originally the Joker starts as a bad guy named the Red Hood, and then he turns into the Joker. And the Red Hood, I think, has a comic book that comes out in the 50s. I don't know if that's his first appearance or not, but the Joker's been around for a long time. No way that the writers knew that they would do this with the Joker's character, but his character purposely does not have a solid backstory, and it's present in this movie as well, which we'll talk about momentarily. But his backstory is purposely up for debate. Even this movie is loosely based on a few comic books, actually. The one more famous comic book. Sorry about that. Fred called me because he's a son of a bitch. Could have just texted me to say that he couldn't make it. But it's all good. I didn't want to waste the first part of this podcast because I thought it was really good. So I'm going to just pick up, you know, whatever. And here we go. So we're going to pick up now. Fred called me. Again, doesn't answer his phone. Also could have just texted me. Well, I said all of that already. Anyway, so Joker, I forgot where I left off kind of, but the point being is that Joker, his, so this is based on the comic book, The Killing Joke, loosely based on the comic book The Killing Joke. There's two other comic books that have influence on this movie, which we'll talk about, but specifically The Killing Joke is the movie that this is pulling its Joker from. And the reason why I say that is because prior to The Killing Joke, which came out I think in 1988, the Joker that we knew was a little less disturbing, a little less chaotic, and a little less of an anarchist. Was just a villain, just one of the villains in Batman's Rogue Gallery. The Killing Joke comes out and really sets him apart. And before that was the Joker in Adam West's Batman, which was portrayed in almost like a Dapper Dan type manner. You know what I mean? Where he's he's obviously a lunatic, but he's also kind of smooth with it. You know what I mean? Like a Dick Tracy Joker almost. And then there is Jack Nicholson's Batman, which Jack Nicholson is too cool. He's just too big for that role almost. And while he was a good Joker, I don't think it really pushed Joker forward the way that The Killing Joke eventually pushes forward the Joker, so that you get Heath Ledger's Joker and now Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Or even allows people to go off like this guy from 30 Seconds to Mars. What the hell is his name? Who's been in the later DC movies, that Joker, which is possibly inspired by the Robin, which we'll talk about that later in a little bit when we get more comic book nerdy here. So The Killing Joke helps push that story forward. There's also a low-key reference to The Dark Knight, which was a comic book that, which is a graphic novel written by Frank What's-His-Face, who also wrote Sin City. Frank Miller, I'm sorry, who also wrote Sin City. And that joke, that features a grizzled old Batman pretty much after he retires, kind of more like the Dark Knight Rises Batman, that Batman who's old, has like fucked up legs and fights Bane or whatever, but is an old grizzled Batman. Ben Affleck tried to loosely also portray this. And the Joker in there is almost a celebrity. And actually the scene in the movie where he kisses the guest on the show, on Murray's show, which is Robert De Niro's character, on his show, is actually a scene lifted straight out of the Dark Knight graphic novel. So and then the city of Gotham is also very much kind of drawn out of Year One, which is a Batman movie. Which is a Batman graphic novel series, which follows Batman's first year, which the first Dark Knight which Batman Begins kind of tries to emulate as well. So it kind of derives the Gotham landscape from that. Especially the timing is like it's that same time frame almost. So this kind of pulls from those three. Now, the most important thing that it pulls from The Killing Joke, which is heavy in this movie, is the idea of the narrator who is the unreliable narrator, someone who similar to Fight Club, where you're watching. Fight Club is given to us through the movie, through the scope of Edward Norton, only to find out that he pretty much suffered a psychotic break, and some of these people are made up. Well, mainly Brad Pitt's character is made up, and this is what happens. Well, that's the same here. It's an unreliable narrator, all the way down to his involvement with his quote-unquote girlfriend, which is a completely made-up thing. It's not something that he actually experiences, which you find out kind of halfway through the movie. The very beginning, when he first turns on Murray's show, he has a lapse where he ends up in the audience of the show, and he's imagining being received by the crowd, being received by Murray in a way. He obviously has an issue with father figures generally. He's chasing Thomas Wayne to be his father. He's chasing Murray to be his father. Thomas Wayne, who he thought was his father because of his mother, who also is suffering, is delusional pretty much. And is, both of these people are very neurotic until obviously Joker breaks. So, and what's important about the unreliability is in The Killing Joke at the end, The Killing Joke gives us kind of the quote unquote canon of Joker's backstory. But at the end of it, he pretty much just discards everything he said about his backstory and says that his past is a multiple choice. Literally the words he says at the end of The Killing Joke. His past is multiple choice. So you actually don't know the history. In The Killing Joke, he is I think he's an engineer who is married, has a pregnant wife, and is trying to be a comedian. He fails. He goes into a life of crime, falls into a vat of chemicals. His wife and child die, an unborn child die in an accident. And, you know, it all goes south from there. But then you find out that may not even be the truth. And that is also where The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's Joker also takes us, because in that he tells two different stories of his origin, one about a drunk father, and I forgot, I for some reason I'm blanking on what the other story. He tells Maggie Gyllenhaal a story of how he got the scars, and then he tells this dude a story when they're all sitting at the table. He makes the pencil disappear. He tells him a story of where he got the scar. No, it's not that. That's not when he does it. Is it? No, it is when he does it. He tells them a different story. Then a lot of people point to his story about, you know, he kind of mentions offhand how people are going crazy over the death of a mayor, but if a caravan of soldiers gets blown up, no one gives a shit. And a lot of people point to that as maybe that's actually his backstory in The Dark Knight, whereas this guy who was, you know, ex-Marine or something like that gets blown up, gets all these shrapnel scars, comes back as a schizophrenic, PTSD, has knowledge of explosives, weapons, the whole thing. Maybe he was, you know, ex-military, and that's actually his backstory. Nobody knows, right? So that's the mystery of the Joker. And it is present in this story, because by the end of the story, what a lot of people believe and have suggested is that this is actually all made up. That there is a scene at the very beginning of the movie, he starts talking to a psychiatrist. I think that's how it starts. Why can't I remember? It's kind of a model. It's a montage of him talking to a psychiatrist, him dancing as the clown on the street, I think. Anyway, he's talking to the psychiatrist, and there's a flash, what we assume is a flashback to his time in a mental hospital, banging his head on this door. It's an all-white door. He's in an all-white dress. And spoiler if you haven't seen it, by the end of the movie, when he's quote-unquote caught, he's sitting across from a psychiatrist in that same all-white outfit at a table, telling the psychiatrist, you know, he starts laughing. She asks him what's funny. He says that he's thinking of a joke that she wouldn't get. You know what I mean? Well, is the joke that she wouldn't get, this entire story is made up. And I'll talk about how that could possibly wrap into Batman, this new Batman movie that's coming out. So the point being that Joker's background remains a mystery, which is exactly what the canon wants it to be. You know what I mean? Because Joker is bigger than his backstory. Batman is a story about vengeance. His backstory is him. You know what I mean? The vengeance is who Batman is. That is his backstory. That's why it's so prescient in the trailer, I Am Vengeance. That is exactly who Batman is based on his backstory. Superman is the same, coming from a dying planet, sees chaos here, does not want to let this planet die. He is the product of his backstory. Well, the Joker, we have no idea what he's a product of. We just know he is essentially an incarnation of evil and anarchy. You know what I mean? Is the best way to put it. And that remains that way in this movie. You know what I mean? We have no idea if he's imagined this entire movie. My man crawls into a refrigerator at one point. You know what I mean? And not to say that that's impossible, but it's just kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Well, you know, that's the whole point. And there's so many tricks that they play throughout the movie where you can't tell what's real, what's fake. I mean, you really start thinking that the relationship was real for a minute with what's-her-face, who plays Domino. She's also in Atlanta. Damn, I can't remember her name right now. Beautiful. Beautiful. Just so fine. Anyway, you almost think that relationship is real. You know what I mean? You actually, because it really lingers as one of the more confusing parts until you find out it's made up. You know what I mean? Until you find out he's imagined this whole thing. It's possible that he's imagined everything, from him somehow sneaking into in the middle. There's police barricades and police sitting on these stairs, stopping these people from getting into the theater where Thomas Wayne is, right? And somehow the Joker just sneaks in. How? Just sneaks in and finds a suit of an usher and just walks into the crowd and just hanging out and then follows Thomas Wayne to the bathroom. Like, those things that seem too unbelievable, too far-fetched, the movie is written too intelligently for that, for those incongruencies to exist. You know what I mean? Because it's just for him to have gotten there too so easily, you almost believe it has to be fake. There's also been people pointing out that the cameras, I'm sorry, all the clocks in the movie point to the same exact time. So the clock you see when he's talking to the first psychiatrist, the last psychiatrist, the clock that he punches off the wall, the punch-in clock, all read the same exact time. You know what I mean? And every single part of this movie seems it could just easily be one person's psychotic, delusion, a made-up delusion. I mean, shit, his mother, you find out, maybe, is delusional, believes that Thomas Wayne is his father, only to find out that no, he was adopted and she allowed him to be abused, and it was an ugly, horrible childhood. But it could be made up because the Joker, again, one of the purpose of what these writers have been doing with the Joker's character especially is to not allow you like Killmonger, right? I always bring him up in Black Panther. The backstory of Killmonger allows you to establish an emotional connection with him that brings you close to his fight, that makes you want to see, that you almost want to see him win. So it becomes complicated when you're rooting for the good guy to be him. You don't really know if you want him to win. Well, Joker is not that. Joker is the complete opposite of that character. He is irredeemable. You know what I mean? He is irredeemable. And that is the point of writing a backstory this way. So there's a couple things I did want to point out from the movie. Obviously, we meet little Bruce Wayne. We meet young Bruce Wayne. Oh, that's even another thing. The way he chokes Alfred, this dude is I mean, he looks anorexic. You know what I mean? What's his face here? Joaquin Phoenix loses like 30 pounds or something to play this character, and it's evident throughout the movie. Well, for him to choke, mind you, Alfred is the story about his backstory is fire. I mean, Alfred is like a special forces guy in Britain, was all this shit, and then he comes over here, which I think spawns a story too. At some point, I want to say spawns a story. I think it spawned some crazy Batman story at some point. I can't remember. I don't. Let me not misspeak on it, but special forces. Alfred is a thug. He's a G, and for Joker to just be choking him in a way that Alfred can literally not get out of his grasp. Right? You almost how could he even be that strong? How could he be that strong? You know what I mean? There's so much about this movie that is very easy to believe as made up. You know what I mean? That's all made up. And I actually believe that the story has parts that are real and parts that are made up throughout. You know what I mean? I think like, for example, I think that he may have actually killed his mother. You know what I mean? I think that might have actually happened. I think he might have actually broke into her apartment, the woman's apartment, her apartment, the girl from Atlanta, the love interest. I think he really might have broken into her apartment. I think that might have actually happened. So I think there are actual scenes that have happened, but even to the point where, which the story is also loosely based off of a true story of, I forgot this guy's name. There's actually an episode, there's a Netflix series called Trial by Media, and I think the first episode is about this guy who's like this vigilante in New York, 1985, I think, who shot 3 people on a train. You find out that this dude might also be a raving lunatic and a racist, and he might have just done it on purpose. But, it turns into this whole thing. Well, the Joker is that exact character, pretty much. He kills these 3 guys. He had reason to kill them almost. You know what I mean? These guys are maybe on the precipice of a sexual assault on this woman, and the Joker kind of saves her. So, almost redeemable, but not quite. His laugh, at first he says he has that card that says he has a condition. And the consistency of it is not clear. You know what I mean? It's really inconsistent where it's clear. So you don't even know if that's real. You know what I mean? That he has this condition that doesn't allow him to not laugh. Essentially, he's just laughing at random times in seemingly uncomfortable situations. But when he's talking to the cops, he's mad normal. You know what I mean? He has moments where he can seem normal and also like charming almost. And then also moments where he's a lunatic. You know what I mean? So everything about this movie says it could be fake. You have no idea. Um, it, that I think is the story of the movie. I mean, listen, they do an incredible job. The one thing I do want to point out, probably my favorite thing about this movie, is the music. The music of the movie is so well done. You know what? I don't even know. I wouldn't be surprised if Hans Zimmer was involved here, because that if there's anyone who can really put strings to a feeling and to make a movie feel heavy, Hans Zimmer is also the guy who pretty much does every Christopher Nolan movie. Um, the job they do here, I mean, even when they play seemingly positive notes, which are really the times when he's talking with the love interest, or even some in the beginning, early stages of him talking to his mother, even those happier tones have this sharp edge to them that don't feel happy. It feels like a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? It feels like a poisoned apple. You know what I mean? Like this beautiful apple that's poisoned. That's what it feels like. And then when the dark moments are heavy and dark, and then the chaotic moments are chaotic, the movie feels like a dream sequence. You know what I mean? Going from scene to scene to scene, you actually don't really completely have a great idea of time. I mean, he goes from putting himself into the refrigerator to answering the phone from Murray's assistant to schedule his appearance on the show. You know what I mean? And that is unclear. It's unclear if his mother's even alive at that point or not. He then goes, kills his mom. It's so unclear. You know what I mean? It is so incredibly unclear. Um, those are the things that stand out. There's one Easter egg that I haven't seen pointed out, which I thought was pretty obvious. Now, these are not the exact same masks, so let me be clear. The mask that he puts on in the subway, which we see a couple other times too in the film, the clown mask, is almost exactly the same clown mask that Heath Ledger wears in Dark Knight, except Heath Ledger wears a mask that is like, it's like a leather mask that goes over his head, where this is a plastic mask that just goes on the face. And Heath Ledger's mask is actually a sad face. But the painting is the same. The hair on top is the same. It's almost the same mask. You know what I mean? That was really the main thing I saw that stood out to me as far as an Easter egg. The head of Arkham who talks to his mother is also a villain in the Batman comic books. I can't remember his name right now, but he's actually a villain in the comic books. There's a couple other loose references to Joker. There's the one scene at the end when he's in the cop car is after he kills Murray. He's in the cop car, which again, that whole scene on Murray, that Murray scene is almost, it's not exactly lifted, but it is almost exactly lifted from the Dark Knight graphic novel. It's almost exactly lifted from that. But that scene when he gets in the cop car, which actually leads us to another part where this might be made up. He gets in the cop car and they do a callback. I mean, it's almost the exact same shot. They do a callback to the Dark Knight when Heath Ledger's driving in the cop car and his head's like he's driving like a dog almost. You know what I mean? Head out the window, licking his chops, hair blowing in the wind. And here's Joaquin Phoenix, almost the exact same type of shot, almost the same camera angle, reversed with his head inside the cop car, and he's like looking at the anarchy he's caused. You know what I mean? So whereas Heath Ledger's reveling in it, Joaquin is just kind of admiring it, which is also kind of, like the fact that he kills the three guys spawns this whole clown fiasco where people are now wearing clown masks, like a V for Vendetta almost. You know what I mean? The unwilling hero here, an anti-hero who has everyone kind of rooting for him because he killed three random guys on a subway. And then he kills Murray, and it causes anarchy where all these people wearing masks are then praising him. Somehow, these guys in this ambulance drive into the cop car that he's in. They pull him out, and he stands up on the cop car, spreads his smile with the blood on his face, and everyone is cheering him. And then the next time we see him, he's in the insane asylum. And it's like, how does he get caught? We don't have any clarity there. You know what I mean? We don't have clarity. So I think that it's possible that this is all made up in his head, that this is all delusional. I wouldn't be surprised at any explanation. If you told me it was real and it's just jumbled and distorted, I could be cool with that. But there are so many things that are off that don't make sense. That I wouldn't be surprised if it was all in his head. Additionally, so how this could possibly tie into the Batman movie. Here's the problem with this movie right now. There's supposed to be a Joker 2, which is going to come out after Batman comes out. And the Joker 2 movie, so if this movie is not Delusion, all right, this movie takes place in the 80s when Batman is a kid. The Robert Pattinson Batman seemingly is picking up in year one or firmly in year one, maybe year two, year three. The reason why I say we know that this is young Robert Pattinson, he is not famous yet because in the trailer they mentioned that. Alfred mentions, you're becoming famous. What's his face? I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Well, why is it blanking on me? Commissioner Gordon. Gordon is just a detective in this movie. You know what I mean? Which is very close to year one, because in year one we follow Batman's first year, but this is also Gordon's first year in Gotham. You know what I mean? Gordon comes from another place. This is his first year in Gotham. So kind of picks up, but the cops do know who Batman is. So the timing is clear. We just know it's early. You know what I mean? Because Batman's not quite famous yet. But it's early on in his, in his gumshoeing, essentially, right? Being the world's greatest detective. But we see a cell phone in the movie. All right, the scene in the trailer of Batman, we see a cell phone, which means a touchscreen cell phone specifically. You know what I mean? We see some sort of device that has a small screen, right? That's not a thing that existed in the 80s. We know that. This movie, according to the narrator, right, that's the Joker, according to the avatar that we're experiencing this movie through, takes place in the 80s. All right, because that it's following the garbage strike of the 80s in New York. All right, that happens in the 80s. Also based on the cars that are being used, there's no technology, everything. We know that this is early 90s, 80s at the very least, right? Even on the TV sets, all of it, right? That's kind of what we're relying on here. So that would mean that the timelines can't exist in the same universe here. You know what I mean? Now, it's unclear if Robert Pattinson's Batman is at all going to include Ben Affleck's Batman or anything that happens there. Listen, DC notoriously, in their comic books, just goes from universe to universe to universe. They're just, every year, they have an infinite Earths thing where this reality collapses and they have to go to a different reality. You know what I mean? So it's possible that Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson are existing in the same DC universe, but in two different times, pretty much two different universes of DC. So we know Robert Pattinson is a little bit more current. Well, this is going to be my theory here. This is where I'm going to give you my theory before I jump into some of the heavier themes of the movie. And then I'm going to give you my theory, and then we're going to move into the heavier themes. My theory is, if they're going to include this in Batman and Robert, which they should, let me be clear, they should, because the notes are the same. If you watch the trailer for the Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman, the new Batman movie coming out, and you see this movie, the notes are the same. These are not Marvel movies, which is what DC has been trying to do since Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's whole, the whole thing that he wanted to do in Dark Knight was make it somewhat realistic. How could you actually have a real Batman? You know what I mean? I remember in the very beginning, they made a huge thing about Batman being able to turn his head because, the Michael Keaton Batman couldn't turn his head. You know what I mean? He would have to turn his shoulders like this because the cowl and the cape. So having a Batman who could turn his head was a huge thing in the first Batman. So having some sense of having a semblance of realism, how this could happen in the real world was part of Christopher Nolan's sell. They also wanted to do that with the Superman movies, but Superman is Superman. What the fuck are you going to do? Well, this Joker movie is based on, if this is real, right, is a realistic view into how a person could turn into a madman capable of being the Joker. You know what I mean? And that is what we see here. So my theory, if they're going to include these two movies, if these movies are existing in the same universe, and this Joker is fighting Batman, because there's another theory, I'll get into the other theory about the other Joker in a second, is that everything is made up here. Maybe some of it is real, some of the interactions are real, because you can take some of these scenes out of the context of that time frame, right? And have them happen modern day, but we'd have no idea, right? We don't have any clue. You know what I mean? Some of these scenes could be modern day. Some of them could be made up. We don't know. So this entire movie is made up. All right, not real. And this Joker has already had interactions with Batman somewhere in a story untold. In untold stories, he's had interactions with Batman. Batman's already put him in Arkham. And this is his delusion of how he created the Batman. Look, he has a love affair with Batman. I mean, what the Joker says to Batman in The Dark Knight, that you complete me, that thought, that is a Joker thing. Because Joker is the anarchist, Batman is law and order, and it's almost like you can't have one without the other, the yin to the yang. That's what Joker really believes about Batman. He loves him, you know, in a weird, twisted way. So is it possible that he could have created a delusion where he's created the Batman, where his actions created the Batman in some weird psychosis that doesn't even exist? You know what I mean? And that this is actually present day. He imagines this in a psychiatric ward in Arkham, kills this person, kills the doctor there because he is the fucking Joker. He's a nutcase. He's insane. You know, a psychopath. And that is how you include this Joker with Robert Pattinson's Batman, I think. I think that is how you bring these two characters together. Otherwise, there's no way they can exist together. Now, the other Joker, the Joker of 30 Seconds to Mars, I wish I could remember his name right now. It's killing me. 30 Seconds to Mars. Anyway, that Joker who's in the Harley Quinn movies, which is important to see, and that's an important part too. Harley Quinn is so important in the Joker story. Harley Quinn is a doctor that works at Arkham. That Joker essentially turns crazy. You know what I mean? He turns her crazy, and becomes Harley Quinn. Well, that Harley Quinn doesn't seem to exist. I don't know. I'm not going to get into too deep into that. That Joker might possibly be the second Robin. Also known as, what the hell is his name? This is after Dick Grayson becomes something Todd. Why can't I remember his name? Anyway, the second Robin gets killed by the Joker at one point in the comic books. Gets taken to the Lazarus pit. When he comes back, he's insane and adopts the mantle of the Red Hood, who, again, as if you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I mentioned Red Hood is is Joker's first pseudonym, is his first alter ego. So Todd, Jason Todd, that's it. I'm sorry, Jason Todd adopts the mantle of the Red Hood and becomes a villain for a while before kind of becoming like an anti-hero, almost like a Venom type of Robin at some point in the comic books. So the theory is that this Joker, 30 Seconds to Mars Joker, is actually Jason Todd. That this Joker here would have killed him at some point, and then he would have then become Joker. But again, we don't know if at any point these guys are crossing paths. We have no idea. This Joker seemed like a standalone movie at first, but them coming out with a sequel. I just can't imagine they're going to come out with a sequel to the Joker running concurrently with a Batman story, and that there's going to be that there would be no involvement between the two. You know, there's going to be no crossover. I just can't imagine that. You can't have Joker without Batman. You can't have Batman without the Joker. You know what I mean? That's just the facts. The Joker is it. You can't really have DC. You can't have Justice League without Joker. Again, the Joker has caused so much havoc over the years for every DC character. You can't have it without the Joker. So that's my take. It's a really good movie. You know what I mean? In my opinion, it's really good. It's a quick 2 hours. It doesn't feel like 2 hours to me, because of the dreamlike way the movie goes on, the music that plays. Again, the music that the constant strings are going, showing his psyche evolving as the movie's going on. It feels you're on a ride, and you're the highs and the lows. You're wondering where it's going to stop the whole time until it stops. You know what I mean? And it's good, in my opinion. Movies. I wouldn't say it's rewatchable, but I would say it's good for sure, because any movie that can put you to sleep for 2 hours and wake you up with a climax, it does a good job. When I say put you to sleep, I mean put you in a trance almost. You know, where you're in this trance and you're just like, wow, like what a fucked up life this guy's living. And credit to Joaquin Phoenix, the job he does, his body his physical body in this movie, his physical body and the music are the movie. You know what I mean? The grotesqueness of his body and the way he contorts it when he dances, especially without a shirt. The scene where he opens the door to the other two the other two clown friends that he worked with. The one dude who's by the way, two callbacks to True Detective in this movie. The one detective was the guy in True Detective who played he plays a pastor, and the big dude that gives him the gun is the Yellow King in True Detective. Who is the killer, serial killer at the end. When he comes into when they come to the apartment, the way that Joaquin Phoenix walks up to the door, I mean, you see like his back is bulging in a weird way. It looks like he has the worst scoliosis I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? It's the most. I never seen a back wind. I never seen a road wind so hard on a person's back. It's grotesque. You know what I mean? It's grotesque. The way he dances is grotesque. The way the music enhances all of the feelings is grotesque. You know what I mean? So it's really, really, really well done. Yeah, it's a transformation. I got to give credit. To me, this is the best Joker. If you want me to be honest, this is the best Joker that we've seen. Heath Ledger, listen, is unimpeachable. Well, let me be clear. The performances of Joaquin Phoenix and the performance of Heath Ledger to me are equal. I don't think one is better than the other. I don't see how you could say one is better than the other because the Jokers are played so differently. The Joker in Dark Knight is, regardless, as I'm going to sum it up with this one scene. As crazy as he seems, he's calculated. And the scene that sums it up is when he goes to see, which has been pointed out a million times if you ever noticed this, when he goes to see Two-Face, Harvey Dent, in the hospital, and he gives him the gun and tells him Harvey Dent flips the coin, his moniker is Bourne, and is going to shoot Joker or not, right, depending on the coin flip. Well, if you look at the scene, Joker is holding the gun in a way that Harvey won't be able to pull the trigger. You see, Harvey can't pull the trigger because Joker's finger is there stopping the trigger from being pulled. Watch the scene over. Joker is a lunatic, but is measured and is still calculated in that movie. He has plans. He says he doesn't have plans. He has mad plans. He puts what's-her-face in one warehouse and Harvey Dent in the other warehouse, and then tells Batman that Harvey Dent is in the other warehouse to force Batman to not save her. Joker is calculated in Dark Knight. As much as chaotic and as anarchist as he is calculated. This Joker is not. That's why I think this might be the better Joker, because Joker really is a fly-by-night person. He has plans in the comic books. Don't get me wrong, you have to in the comics. But what's trying to be portrayed of the Joker is like in The Killing Joke, it's almost as if he just shows up with a gun and says, fuck it, I'm going to do this crazy thing right now. I think that this Joker, to me, represents best the chaotic nature of his mind. And Heath Ledger is unimpeachable. Again, it's unimpeachable. That job he does, the Joker, is so fucking incredible. It's more about how it's written. You know what I mean? More than anything, it's how it's written. And if this story is all psychosis, then it's even better. Then it's even more closer to the Joker to me. You know what I mean? So, now, to get into some of the heavier themes, there was a lot of complaints about the violence of this movie. I mean, there was all types of shit being spawned. Oh, is violence in violence in movies create violence in real life and all this crazy shit? Listen, this movie, let me be clear, this movie is not that violent. Not into the last scene of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, to me, is far more violent and far more jarring than this. The last scene of Hateful Eight, to me, is far more jarring and violent than anything that really happens in this movie. You know what I mean? Some of it is jarring, sure. It's not more or less violent than any other movie. I think this is specific because mental health is so taboo in this country. Still, you know, as much as we make leaps and we strive so much to be understanding, it's still very taboo. You know what I mean? And I've told stories about talking to women on dating apps who just treat mental health as like, oh, yeah, mental health, oh, no, fuck that. You know what I mean? It's like how people could still treat mental health that way is, it tells you how far this country has come. We don't know everything about mental health. We're just coming across the idea that mental health, like trauma, could be inherited. You know what I mean? That is something that we're just coming across right now. So mental health is such a taboo subject in this country. It's discussed in a way that is unrealistic. Meanwhile, the sufferers of mental health, like someone who suffers from mental, I'm very direct about my mental health issues. Meanwhile, other people are afraid to even mention it. You know what I mean? They're afraid to talk about it. If you don't think you suffer from mental health, you don't even want to say the words. It's like calling what's her face in the mirror, Bloody Mary. You know what I mean? To say mental health. If I say the words mental health, I may wake up with fucking depression. You know what I mean? But that's not how it works. Mental health is so taboo. That is why people felt that way about this movie. Because people are scared of mental health. And to watch somebody have a possible psychotic meltdown, a psychotic break that could feel real, you know what I mean? That leads to this person becoming almost a serial killer, but not exactly, because serial killers have MOs and the whole thing. You know what I mean? That's not exactly what this person is. He's just chaotic, you know? I think that really bothered people a lot more than the actual violence of the movie. Batman is more violent. When you think about it, Batman beats the scene in the trailer of the new Batman movie, to me, is more violent than anything that happens in this movie. He is pummeling somebody with his fists. The scene in fucking Game of Thrones when the Hound fights Brienne, that is a far more violent scene than anything that happens in this movie. You know what I mean? It's the combination of the mental health breakdown that I think causes people that make people feel so uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Especially when you look at the mental health of some of the shooters in this country, aside from the fact that some of them are just racist assholes, but the mental health of some of those mass shooters in this country, these movies don't spawn that, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a fucking expert. These movies don't spawn that, in my opinion. These people were damaged already. I'm sorry, Columbine happened before Joker came out. See, you can't just go and pick and choose when something is going to spawn something else. At the time Columbine happened, I remember there was all the talk about rap music causing violence. Those fucking guys didn't listen to rap music at all. They listened to Marilyn Manson. So where again, you know what I mean? When someone has a mental health issue, maybe you could make the argument that things can enhance their like the neuroticism of their own neurosis, possibly. But taking a life, being anxious and depressed and taking a life are two vastly different things. You know what I mean? To say someone's suffering from mental health could watch the Joker then walk out and murder somebody are crazy. If that person was incapable of murder, he does not become capable because he watched Joker. Especially when the movie might be, he might have imagined the whole fucking thing. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion of this movie. I think a lot of people just are not ready to have heavy conversations about mental health, or I think people are so reliant. People rely so heavily. I remember when the Aaron Hernandez documentary came out, and Bill Simmons did a podcast talking about it. And in the podcast, he talks about, he goes in, because the documentary, in my opinion, it's not like it's flattering for Aaron Hernandez. It's not like it's like the movie, the Aaron Hernandez documentary was not made to say, you see, this is a tragic figure that we should feel bad about. No, it's saying this is how somebody with maybe undiagnosed mental health issues could be raised in this household where he's also possibly gay and is not allowed to express that at all because his father is, kind of a dick. How that person could come into this situation where he becomes a murderer. No one is saying let Aaron Hernandez live or that he shouldn't have to pay for the crimes that he committed, right? It's that this is how this person is created. You know what I mean? That's what that documentary did. And but Bill Simmons' reaction to it, I think, emulates the reactions of a lot of people, which is, no, he's just a bad person. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. He could be a bad person, sure. However, how did he come to be bad, right? Because just like I mentioned about trauma being inherited, right now we pretty much base mental health and people's conditions on nature versus nurture, right? That's what most people are taught in school. Is it the nature or is it how they're nurtured that makes them? Are they born with the nature to be this way, or is it how they're nurtured, right? That creates this way. Well, now you find out that there could be trauma inherited. That also trope these three. So this used to be 50 and 50, and now it's 33, 33, 33, right? So the way we discuss mental health, it continues to evolve, but to the general public, it doesn't. So when they watch a movie like this, they're caught off guard and they're surprised by the themes of it. And they're just like, oh, this person just evil. And you're, associating this with this. I don't see it that way. You know what I mean? I see this person is a lunatic and a murderer and a mass murderer. He's the worst villain in the history of comic books, arguably, the most evil villain, arguably. Um, Even in the original Thanos comic book, in the original Infinity Gauntlet comic book, Thanos is when Thanos snaps to wipe out half the universe because he's in love with Death. That's the original comic book. You know what I mean? Because he wants to get in Death's pants. Death is a woman, and he's a fine woman, and he wants to, he's trying to smash. He wants to see what's up with Death, trying to see if Death wants to hang out, whatever, grab a bite, and he wants to murder half of the galaxy to impress her. You see what I'm saying? There's reason to it. For Joker, there's no reason. And we're just left studying the character. We're left studying his mind and his psychosis to see, well, how did he come to be here? You know what I mean? And people want to use brushstrokes to say, well, this person's just bad or this person's just evil. But that is taking away how you recreate a person like this. Do you see what I'm saying? How society could fail somebody to the level that they would become this, because that's what the story of this movie is in a lot of ways. It's the failure of society. I mean, in the beginning, he's seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist, and the therapist, because he can't afford a therapy, he's, presumably getting therapy through, some sort of state-funded thing. And the therapist says, we're shutting down next week. You won't be able to see me. He says, well, how am I going to get medicine? She says, you can't. And this is how society fails. These are real life things. This is how society in real life, in real time, fails a person. And those are the themes of the movie. And people don't want to discuss that, are not prepared. They rather look at the violence and say, well, this is bad. And it is. It's gory. And if you're not prepared to see it, then if you have a weak stomach, you might want to be ready for the goriness of the movie. But it's not even that gory, honestly. It's just the killings are sudden. When he kills someone, it's sudden and it's jarring. There's no lead up. There's no big brawl. It's just death, which is the Joker. That is the Joker's MO. And I just think that, I think that is really the story. I think people complained about the violence. We're just not ready for the undertones of mental health, the undertones of a failure of society. This movie, in a lot of ways, especially today, it's funny that I chose now to watch this movie, because if you watch it, you see so many, not callbacks to it's not a callback, but it's so many things that mirror today, especially with the pandemic, especially with the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and everyone, and more recently, Jacob, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. It happens every day. We're seeing somebody die. So it mirrors so much. The anarchy that's happening in this movie mirrors so much of today. That I think people get uncomfortable with those themes more than they get uncomfortable with the violence. You know what I mean? Because, motherfucker, you could go watch, I could put on movies that are 100 times more violent than this. Just gratuitous bullshit violence that mean nothing. But with these themes, people are shook now. You know what I mean? So that's my opinion. I think it was a good movie. Would I watch it again? I would watch it again in a way like me and Fred talked about before, rating movies almost. Where like 1917, I think we talked about. I think that was when we talked about where it's like I would watch this movie again in a way where I'm showing it to somebody. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, you haven't seen Joker? Let's go. Or a girl's coming over. Hey, you ain't seen Joker? Yo, let's watch Joker real quick. You know what I mean? I'll watch it with you. Type shit. But would I go out of my way to watch Joker again? Probably not. It's heavy. It's heavy. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. But if you appreciate art, for sure, this movie is up your alley. If you appreciate art and metaphors, the whole thing, it's right up your alley. What he does, if you appreciate great acting, shit, this is right there. Again, to me, the most impressive part of this movie, it's fuck the story. The story is cool. It's okay. No different. It's like Falling Down. Have you ever seen Falling Down by Michael Douglas? This is kind of that. It's the way he contorts his body, what he's done to lose weight, even the way he's sitting here in this picture. It's almost like his body is a skeleton. You know what I mean? It's like a skeleton used for this one purpose. Even the dancing scene on the steps, everything is so fucking grotesque and so almost exaggerated in a childlike but not way. You know what it reminds me of? There was this video that went in the early days of things going viral. This might have been, 2005, 2006. I'll never forget this. There was a video that went around called the Bunny Dance, the Princess Bunny Dance. And it was this family filming their daughter who had some, I don't know, she had some condition, man. She was like just all skin and bones, but her body was bent in such a grotesque way. And she has like an umbrella, and she's like kind of marching towards the camera and twirling the umbrella. And it's fucking terrifying. Yo, I couldn't watch the video. It was so, and that's a shame. That's a real person, I think. You know what I mean? But it freaked me out. You know, it like fucked me up for a long time. I wouldn't watch it. I remember one time this is when I was in Temple, and I put it on because I was in the lab with people, and I was like, maybe I can watch it here. And then she came to the camera. I like literally was just recoursing my seat. I just thought she was gonna pull me in the camera. I don't know. It whatever freaked me out. So his movements and his dancing and everything he does reminds me of that video. You know what I mean? That type of movement and grotesqueness that is like unforced, and it's impressive, man. It's fucking, if you know anything about Joaquin Phoenix, he's been doing crazy shit like this for a long, when he did the rap, when he was rapping for a while, everyone thought he wanted to be a rapper. It was like a method acting thing he was doing, apparently. And it, you know, his ability to go that far and that deep into a character, it's pretty fucking impressive. He really does it here. You know, he really fucking takes it all the way here. The laugh, all of it. That mixed with the music, the violin and the cello and the heavy strings. I mean, it's really so artfully done. If you can appreciate those things of a movie, you're going to appreciate this movie. No question about it. You would appreciate it. It's not a happy movie, though. You know, it's if you suffer from mental health, like I suffer from mental health, it's kind of sad. You know, it's kind of fucked up and sad. It's sad in a way, not that you're rooting for him, but it's sad in a way that's like you could see how someone could get failed this poorly, could get failed this badly in society where it all comes crashing down. You know what I mean? So, excellent movie. I think in terms of rewatchability, maybe it's like a 4 in terms of rewatchability, but in terms of one watch, I think it's definitely like an 8. You know, the acting is excellent. Good actors all around. Good cast, no question. A really, really good cast. Other than Joaquin Phoenix, not a whole lot of A-list actors, you know, honestly. But the actors that are in it, there's nothing whack. There's not a bad actor in the movie, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that's it. Everybody, wash your hands. Stay safe, wear a mask, arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor, Black Lives Matter, arrest all of the fucking cops who are killing black people, please, or attempting to kill them. Please, you know what I mean? Just do it. I think we'll stop there. You know what I mean? Take care. Sometimes I gotta coach. And sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta.